Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Anna, and before we even start the video, I know I look crazy, okay? My hair is all wet. I do look like a wet dog, but honestly, it has been so hot here in Portugal, in the entirety of Europe. We are being struck by a heat wave, and you all know how I feel about summer. I hate it, okay? I hate it here. I feel so unmotivated. It is so hard for me to do legitimately anything. Even filming this video, I just had to give myself a huge pep talk because I want to film, but I just get really lazy because it's so hot. Like, it's so freaking hot outside, and I knew I just had to have a shower before I even filmed because I usually, lock my bedroom door so nobody can bother me. And obviously because of that, it is going to get hot here, and that's why I decided to have a shower so I can at least be a little bit fresh. So please excuse my crazy look, my wet hair, okay? But like I said, it would be the only way to even film this video because the heat outside is unbearable. And the month of June has ended. Today is actually the 30th of June, so the last day of this month. So of course I am here with a wrap up, and I'm going to be talking about all of the books I want to read in the month of July. So first of all, let us talk about the book that I'm currently reading, which is The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. I am actually 56% through this book. I will not be able to finish it in June, obviously, because today is the last day. But I do want to talk about it just a little bit because I am going to talk more when it's time for my July wrap-up. But all I want to say is I'm actually a little bit disappointed with this book because it's not really what I was expecting. It's not a bad book by any means, It's not great either, It's kind of like a 3-star, but for me, it's feeling like a 2-star because I really wasn't expecting what is happening in this book whatsoever. I thought it was going to be a lot more historical fantasy because I don't know why, just people sold it to me that way. That's how I saw it being described, really historical fantasy, telling the tale of the Beast of Gévaudan. And right now, although the book is about the Beast of Gévaudan and it is sort of a retelling, it's a retelling that I don't really enjoy. I was expecting the plot twist, or it's not really even a plot twist, but I was expecting what the Beast of Gévaudan was going to be, but I wasn't expecting all of the supernatural elements to this. And I don't mind the supernatural elements, but I do mind what the author did with them. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm talking way too much about this book, but honestly, it just really isn't what I was expecting. I was expecting a lot more of lore from the village of Gévaudan, a lot more about its history, the people living there, all of the accounts and the tales that we had from those people and what actually happened. But no, we don't really have that. I don't know why. I was just expecting something a lot more different than what I actually received. So the first book that I read in the month of June was Bonesmith by Nicki Preto, and unfortunately this one was also a disappointment for me. I gave this one a 2-star, and honestly the favorite thing about this book for me was the setting. I love grim settings, I love gothic settings, and the cover is stunning, and it does deliver. I really enjoyed the setting. It's not really explored, the world in and of itself is not explored too much, you don't really get that insane world building, but the setting and the vibes and the atmosphere is pretty dark. Whenever I was reading this book, all of the colors in my head were dark greens, grays, blues, just those dark colors, and everything just seemed lifeless in my head, which it is amazing because that is the setting of this book. And I did enjoy the magic system as well. I do enjoy anything that has to do with necromancy, bones, so all of that I really did enjoy, but this story just felt very lackluster for me. It is so unoriginal, nothing new to it. It was just predictable, it was just predictable and boring to the T. And even these characters, they weren't special by any means. It feels like I've read this book multiple times, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just one of those books where there's nothing original to it, there's no twist to it, there's just nothing new to it, it's just saltless, it's basic, and that's what unfortunately really made me not like this book, because it was just something that you could find anywhere. It wasn't anything special. It is so basic that I don't even remember the main character's name, literally. I don't know the characters' names. I actually forgot the characters' names. It feels like I didn't even read this book. It is so strange, but we follow our main character, and she wants to be a Valkyrie. Now, in this world, the dead don't really stay dead. The spirits are still attached to the body, and the job of a Valkyrie is to protect the Reaper, because the Reaper is the one that's going to sever the connection between the spirit and the body, so the spirit can rest at peace. And spirits are usually very hostile, and this is the job of the Valkyrie, is to protect the Reaper from the spirit while she is trying to find the bone that is anchoring said spirit. And our main character, she's going to the exam so she can become a fully fledged Valkyrie. Unfortunately, she does not end up passing, and she gets sent to this wall that is very exiled from her kingdom, and nothing really happens here, just nothing. People come here in exile because they are being punished. So that is exactly what is happening to her. She's being punished because she did some things that the exams are not allowed. Or if you don't really have a potential of becoming a Valkyrie, which is the case of our main character, it's not that she doesn't have the potential, but because she failed the exam, you know, she is going to this place as well. And she actually ends up meeting one of the princes of this kingdom. You know, the king has 3 sons, and she meets the youngest one. He doesn't really have a role because since he is the 3rd one, he's not even the spare child. You know, the first one is the heir, the second is the spare child, he's the 3rd one, so he has basically no role. Nothing happens in his life. So he goes to visit the wall. He pretends that he's doing very important things, but he actually gets kidnapped by an ironsmith. And in this world, in the desolation, I think it's the desolate lands, I really don't know, I do not remember any single name from this book, but the ironsmiths were believed to be completely extinct. And the reason for this is because it is believed that they were the ones that caused a catastrophic event known as the breach. You know, it killed a lot of people, and that's why the Bonesmiths had to essentially, you know, kill off every single ironsmith. And of course, Bonesmiths, they control bones. Ironsmiths, they control anything made of iron. So of course, they are very, very powerful. And the prince gets kidnapped by an ironsmith, like I said. And of course, our main character sets on an adventure trying to rescue the prince. And then an adventure ensues. And of course, you know, she is going to maybe fall in love with this ironsmith. You know, it's potentially a love interest. And this is why it just felt so lackluster, because nothing happened. Like, nothing of interest happened. Everything was just so predictable. And like I told you, you know, I don't even remember our characters' names. I legitimately do not remember their names because they were just so forgettable. Everything about this book is forgettable. It's not that it's a bad book or it's badly or poorly written. It's not really that. It's just, it is so like any other book out there that it does not stand out. And afterwards, I read Morte, Primeira, Vista from Portuguese author Pires. And honestly, I give this one 3.5 stars because this was a very good beginning for a saga. I really enjoyed this book. The main issue that I have with this one was you have 9 POVs, okay? And that is insane. It's already insane to have 9 different characters. But the problem is the book is very, very short. It doesn't even have 400 pages. And if you're going to have 9 characters, I think the book should have been a lot longer. Because what ended up happening is that we had some characters that were very developed, you know, and then some that were not as developed, because all of these characters are converging into one main plot line. But you did have some characters where you could understand, okay, this is where the story is going. This is where, you know, they're going to meet this said character, or this is, you know, they're in the same place as another character. We understood the plot line from the get-go. But there are some other characters where we are getting to know them, but we don't really understand their role. And that is why for those characters, I particularly wasn't interested in them as much because of that. Because whenever I was reading their point of view, I was like, okay, you're not adding anything to the plot line. You're not adding anything to the story. I don't really want to read about you. You know, you're not even that interesting. So that was my main pickle with this book. And the world building, it wasn't as explored. I did really want to see a lot more of other races because this is sci-fi. So of course we do have so many other planets, so many other races that we still have not explored. I did like the little details that the author put in here and there. For example, the drinks here, they have ice cubes and all of them have different colors which have different flavors. I just thought that was something very cool to see. But in this book, we follow, like I said, 9 different characters, and we follow basically where the human race has colonized a different planet called Neorbish. And the reason why we colonize this planet is because they have a mineral that is very important to us because it is sustainable. You know, we have a lot of sustainable energy because of that. So Earth still exists, and I do enjoy that. I do enjoy the fact that Earth still exists, but humans have colonized this planet, and there is something going on. We have some rumors of an old power that is lurking, and I am very excited to see where that plotline is going. But the main plotline here is a drug which is called Death at First Sight, which, you know, that's the title of the book. And it's just roaming around the streets, causing a lot of chaos. And some of the characters are investigating that said drug, you know, what is happening. Why are people suddenly dying? They're dying in strange ways, and they don't really understand where that drug is coming from. And this first book was very much the setup for that plotline, the setup for all of the 9 characters. And that is why, you know, like I said, again, I think this book should have been longer if it was to have so many characters. Otherwise, I wouldn't really have as many characters. I would have introduced new characters in the second book. But other than that, I am quite excited to see where the second book is going. And then I finally read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and I ended up giving it a 4-star. You know, it is a solid start. And you don't really have much of a plot, which is something that does bother me a lot in books. I always like following a good narrative, a good plot, you know, with plot twists. It's just us following Fitz as a main character, so I am prepared, you know, mentally prepared for that. But still, you know, the first book, it didn't amaze me, but one thing that did amaze me, though, her writing, oh my god. Like, her writing is astounding, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's talented. I don't know what else to say say about that woman.
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend. And she is the moment. Now, come on now.
I don't even know how to describe that writing. It's just 10 out of 10, like, that. I don't know, like, every single word, every single sentence, every single paragraph, like, I was eating it all up. It's just amazing, and I can honestly tell I'm going to have the time of my life reading those 16 books from the realm of the Underlings, because her writing, like I said, is exquisite to say the least. I am jealous of her, okay? I wish I could write like her, because I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she can describe feelings so well, relationship dynamics so well, how she can describe anything, literally anything. I don't know how she can do that, but everything was just so beautifully worded. I absolutely loved that part. And of course, I love Fitz. Fitz as the main character, you know, he goes through so much. I don't know. I know it's going to get worse. You know, I do know it's going to get worse, but Fitz goes through so much. But I feel like I know Fitz. You know, from this first book, I understand how he feels. I understand how he thinks. And it's truly amazing to see that because, you know, as a writer, one of your goals is to make characters feel real to your readers. You want the readers to feel with your characters. You want the readers to immerse themselves completely in your story, in your character. And I do believe that Robin Hobb has achieved that, not only with Fitz, but even with the other characters. They are just so beautifully done, so beautifully constructed. It's insane. Like, her talent, the talent of this woman is absolutely insane, because I have never read, you know, such real characters in a long time. I think the last time I read, you know, characters that also felt really real to me were The Daughter of the Forest by Julie Merlier or A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. Martin. They just have this way of crafting characters. Man, I just, you know what, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. I am so excited to read The Royal Assassin. You know, although it is a big chunker, I am not intimidated at all. I do want to read so much more by her. I am so freaking excited. But in this book, we follow Fitz, and he is the bastard to the king of this realm, which I don't know the name of. I completely forgot the name of this realm, but anyways, he is the bastard of the king of this realm. The king has actually died, and he was actually left at the castle at a very young age. You know, the boy's grandfather, he really didn't want to take care of Fitz. He didn't want to, you know, have one more mouth to feed, so he just simply went up to the castle, gave him, and he said, you know, this is the king's son, he shall deal with it. And of course the king is now dead, and Fitz as a bastard, he is not treated well in the court at all. Like, nobody likes Fitz. You know, I think there are only like 2 people that can tolerate Fitz and that like Fitz, but everyone else, they do not like Fitz because they see Fitz as a threat to the throne, despite, you know, being other heirs to the throne. Like, there are more legitimate heirs to the throne, but everybody still thinks that Fitz is some sort of like threat, and I do think he is going to pose as a threat. I'm not going to lie, because I do see, you know, the 2 people that are up to the throne, they are sort of fighting for it. At least one of the people is fighting for it, and I do see another one self-destructing in the sense of they're trying to protect the kingdom. You have Verity. He's trying to protect the kingdom at all costs, at the cost of his own health as well. So I do think that in future books, Fitz actually might be a threat to the throne, but right now he's not really a threat. He went to the castle. He was literally just 6 years old, and people were just hating on him nonstop. People did not treat him well at all, and he had to grow up with all of that hatred, with people just being very mean to him and always setting him up, not just for failure, mind you. They're trying to kill Fitz, and he has always had to outsmart everybody. And of course, he's going to meet a very mysterious character in this book called Chad, and he's going to teach Fitz how to be an assassin, and the story goes from there. And I just absolutely love this, okay? As you can tell by my reaction and the way I am describing this book, I absolutely loved this story, and I'm so excited to continue my journey through the realm of the Underlings. And I also read my second romance of my life, which was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And honestly, I think I'm giving this one a 2.5 stars, you know. And I think romance is just ultimately not for me, you know. It's just not something that I enjoy reading about. It's not something that I care to read about. But I do have to say, this one is actually better written than Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. That was the one that I read last year. But I actually did not have as much of a fun time with Book Lovers for some reason. I think with Ali Hazelwood, the writing was so bad that I just had a very fun time. But this one, the writing wasn't bad, actually. It's just, you know, romance is just not really for me, and I quite enjoy the way that Emily Henry constructed these characters, because you do have Stefan and Charlie, and these 2 people, they met on the wrong foot. You know, they became rivals, and 2 years later, they actually meet at a very small town, you know, that small town setting. And of course, they start out as rivals and end up as lovers, and I really enjoyed these 2 characters in the sense of, I think they were so much more complex than I was expecting to. You know, Stefan, she is the type of woman that loves controlling everything, and what I mean by this is She loves having everything sorted out. She lives by the philosophy of everything has a solution, you know, all the problems have a solution, and she just enjoys controlling that aspect. You know, she likes solving everything for everyone, because if she sees that anyone is having some sort of difficulty, you know, people that she cares about, her first thought is to fix everything. That's what she likes doing, because she grew up with her mother. She was a single mother, and she saw the struggles that her mother had in raising her and her sister Lizzie, and that's why she always finds a way to try and fix everything, especially for her sister Lizzie. Lizzie, you know, she has some financial difficulties, and she's always trying her very best to, you know, just solve everything. And I just really liked seeing her growth in the point where she had to realize that she was taking care of everyone but herself. She was leaving herself behind. She really wasn't putting her needs first. She was always trying to make sure that her sister was okay, that she had everything that she needed, but she never made sure that herself was okay. You know, she never took care of herself. And she also had to grow from the need of having to control everything and solve everything, because even Lizzie, she was telling her, like you're starting to sound like my mom, more like my sister. You know, I want a sister. I want my sister back. I don't want you to act like my mother and trying to figure out everything for me. You know, that's not what I'm looking for. And Stefan's really had to go through that personal journey in this small town. And Charlie, he has his own demons as well, because he always thinks that he's not really the right person. He's always the weird one. He's always the one that is not meeting people's expectations, especially from his family. You know, he thinks that his family is expecting so many different things from him, when in reality, they're not really. They enjoy Charlie as he is, and they understand that he cannot be their everything, their all, or what they were expecting of him to be. And I just really enjoyed the growth of these characters, and I did enjoy the fact that, you know, Emily Henry took the time to build them and construct them and give them just a little bit more oomph, if you know what I'm saying. You know, I do miss Charlie's point of view. I do think that we should have had a male point of view. I don't know why romance authors don't really add the male point of view, because I just also wanted to see his own thoughts, you know, his own just thought process, his point of view, you know, how he saw everything, how he saw Stefan's, just all of that. I don't know why they don't add the male POV, but I really wanted one. And finally, yesterday I read The Little Prince, and honestly, I do have to say, I'm giving this one a 4-star. I do think it is a little bit overrated. You know, the way that people talk about this book, it's like groundbreaking, life-changing, and although it does have very important passages and very important reflections, it is not that groundbreaking. You know, it's not really that groundbreaking, and it didn't really touch me in the way that I was expected to. You know, I do recommend everyone to read this book, especially children, because you can take a lot of life lessons from this book. It's just not something that wowed me, you know, and amazed me. I think this book, you know, suffers from being overhyped. You know, a lot of people talking about this book and saying how beautiful it is, how life-changing it is, and to me, it didn't really feel that way, you know. Although it was a very cute story about just living in the moment and being in the present and enjoying friendship and enjoying connection with other people and staying whimsical, because that is one thing that this author says: stay whimsical, people, because adulthood sucks and adults suck, because you do have to explain everything to an adult, which is true. When you become an adult, you do lose a lot of your whimsical when you were a child, which is very, very sad. I do like to think that I still have some whimsical in me. You know, I do fight a lot to keep, you know, the last remnant of whimsical that I have in my life. It is quite hard to maintain it when you're an adult. I am not going to lie, but you really, really should maintain it. But other than that, I didn't think it was anything special, you know. Now, let us talk about all the books I want to read in the month of July, and today I'm actually starting The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I've talked about this previously. I do want to start this in June, and I'm literally starting this in the last day of June, okay? But it still counts. It still counts, people. I am starting this one today. I am quite excited for this one, and this one was more of a spontaneous read, but I really do want to read Writing by Stephen King. I do have the Portuguese version. I went to get this at my library, and as you can tell, I already started it. I read 40 pages because I do want to improve my craft on writing, and I do think having some advice from someone that has sold millions upon millions upon millions of books is pretty important. So I am going to read this book. I don't really have much expectations for this book. The only expectation is writing tips. That is what I'm expecting, but he does start with his own autobiography, which I do think it is interesting. And it's not really an autobiography because he's just recounting moments where writing was very important to him and how he became a writer, or how kind of like it was already in him. You know, he kind of does say that you have to be born with this little bug to want to write, and I certainly think I was. You know, I do think I was, because I do have some similarities to Stephen King, and what I mean by this is telling stories, okay? I was always telling stories, and no, I am not comparing myself to this man, because Stephen King is one and only. What I'm saying is, you know, at least I have a little bit more hope of becoming a writer, because also when I was little, I was telling stories in any way, shape, or form, just like Stephen King was. But like I said, I don't really have many expectations for this book. The only thing I'm expecting is some good writing tips that that will actually help me become a writer in the future. So let us see what Mr. Stephen King has to say. And finally, I do really want to continue with the Sun Eater series, so I am going to start Howling Dark, which is the second book in this series, and I don't really have many expectations as well, because the first book, I enjoyed it, it was a 4-star, and the only expectation that I do have is the way the first book ended. I am expecting to see a little bit more of the world building. You know, I want to see different worlds, different people, different races. I do want to see a lot more about the alien race that the humans are fighting against, so I am expecting a little bit more of that as well, and I do want more narrative, because the first book, it was very much a big prologue. In my opinion, 60% of the book was just one big prologue. We were just following Hadrian as he was just living his life, everything was happening to him, and we didn't really have a plot narrative to say, we didn't really have a main narrative, and I actually didn't really mind that, because this is a 7-series book. So if the first one does read a little bit more like a prologue, to me, that isn't really an issue. So I do expect a lot more narrative in the second book. I want to see a plot, I want to see a story, I want to see where Hadrian is going next, I want to see more of the alien race that are fighting against the humans. I want to see more of their culture, more mysteries, that's just what I'm expecting from the second book. And I do know that a lot of people say, the first book is the weakest one, it just gets better from the first book. So I am expecting that, because the second one is also a big chunker. So I really, really do hope that the second one can be a 5-star. And these are all the books I want to read in the month of July and all the books I read in the month of June. Please let me know down in the comments below, how many books did you read in June? Which book was your favorite? Have you read any of the books I did read in June? Do you have any opinions of them? Have you also read any books that I do want to read in July? If you also have opinions of them, please let me know down below. And also, let me know your July TBR, because I am always looking for recommendations. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does help my channel out a lot, and it gives me a lot of validation and motivation to continue filming these videos for you guys. And I will see you on my next video. Bye!